Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's start with maybe two things that we all agree on. This state is too expensive, and also that government which governs closest to the people is that which governs best. Now, when you consider those two factors in this state, it's easier to understand why the state is too expensive in the first place. When we talk about all the issues that make the state unaffordable, so many of the reasons emanate from this building. The taxes are far too high, yet when we have an opportunity to cut middle-class taxes, we can't even get to a point where we all agree it should be permanent. We pile taxes and fees and bureaucracy one on top of the other so that we have the highest energy bills in the continental U.S. The barriers to entry in the healthcare sector are so expensive that we cannot provide affordable and accessible healthcare. The labor regulations and other regulations on small businesses are so great that we have not been able to create a single net new job in this state since the late 1990s. One thing after another, one policy on top of another, the new bureaucracy, the new mandates, to say nothing of all the unfunded mandates on our towns that raise our property taxes, one after another has made this state unaffordable. So now, when I hear proposed solutions from advocates or from elected officials in this building saying that the solution to the unaffordability of this state is to concentrate more power, more discretion in this building and take away power and control from our localities, from our local leaders, from our communities, I have to say, I do not believe it. I do not believe the solution to the problems of this state are to take away more power and control from our localities and vest it, concentrate it here in this building, here in the state capitol. I think there is a better way, and I think there are better solutions than this bill, Work, Live, Ride, in order to create housing, to create affordability in this state, and certainly to protect local control of our towns and cities. This bill will affect nearly every town and city in the entire state in a highly prescriptive way. According to the public testimony of the proponents, it will affect over 160 towns and cities in this state, and in doing so, put vital infrastructure funding at risk for those towns and cities if they do not bend to the dictates of the state government, and in particular, a coordinator that is repeatedly referenced in the bill and the discretion of that coordinator in particular. How much funding could potentially be at stake? We didn't really figure that out in the public hearing. We were told that tens of millions is too low, that hundreds and hundreds of millions is probably too high. Maybe it's around $100 million of funding per year, but we don't even know how much funding is at risk that if we pass this bill through committee, if we pass it into law, that towns and cities will potentially run the risk of having taken away from them. We know that a lot of the funding is very important to so many different interests of towns and cities. Sewer and water funding, brownfield remediation funding, quite actually ensuring that we can clean up toxic sites in towns and cities who need help in order to remediate them, and so many other sources of vital infrastructure funding. Even if those towns are making positive strides to construct housing, if they do not either adhere to the density requirements, the as of right requirements of this bill, or meet the exact tastes of the coordinator who's given so much power in this bill, those funds will be put at risk. I think one of the great unique aspects of this state is that there's so much diversity in the towns and cities, the 169 towns and cities all across this state. None is exactly the same, and we wouldn't want to make any of them exactly the same. But there is very little flexibility in the requirements of this bill that has a mandate against 169 different towns and cities. Yes, some of them are only going to be required to do 15 units an acre or 20 units an acre. Yes, the coordinator has some discretion, but we are imposing these prescriptive solutions and development quotas on 160 different towns and cities which have different needs and should be given more discretion than this type of proposal recognizes. Again, I think we agree that local discretion, local democracy is a positive in our state. And even if we do have to determine things at the state level, it should be done in a democratic fashion. Yet we have hundreds of millions of dollars of funding potentially being withheld from towns and cities determined by a coordinator set out in this bill. 9 times the term determined by a coordinator is mentioned in only an 8-page bill. That means we're passing something where we don't actually know what form it'll take in practice, because so much power and especially power over purse strings and development and zoning regulations is vested in this single person in a way that we can not fully understand when we cast our votes today. In the public hearing process, the good chairman and I were here for 14 hours. We listened to very passionate testimony from people on both sides who are earnest on both sides, and people will cast votes for and against this bill today earnestly on both sides. But it has been very clear to everyone listening that we heard and we have seen hundreds more messages in opposition of this bill than we have seen in favor of this bill. From grassroots, from regular people all across the state, including people who are on the ground making earnest and strong efforts in order to create more affordable housing stock in Connecticut. We heard from people on both sides of the aisle. Some of the most moving, I think, and impressive testimony were from local municipal officials who are either unaffiliated or Democrats, who have been active in their community working to create more affordable housing stock, including transit-oriented development or downtown development, however you would like to call it, who think that this bill makes an end run around those efforts and undermines those efforts. Those are the exact type of people we should be engaging in making policy that I am confident will advance the affordability interests, will advance the housing interests, and will protect home rule in this state. If we engage them, I think we can come up with a positive bipartisan product that is far superior to this bill. What could those solutions look like? I think it looks like a clear funding stream that would subsidize the creation of municipally supported affordable public housing. When I talk to the housing authorities in my district, in the 3 towns and city in my district, when I talk to other local leaders in my district, including those who are running a new affordable housing trust, they say that oftentimes it's just the funding that is keeping them from developing a little bit more affordable housing, just topping off with state subsidies in a very direct and clear manner, a direct funding stream, just a little bit more. We would be able to create more affordable housing with local buy-in in places across the state, maybe especially in Fairfield County. We've heard bipartisan calls for improving the voucher system in this state to make the housing vouchers that are supported by the state more flexible so that people who are in need can go town to town, city to city, wherever best fits them, and don't get caught up in all the bureaucracy of being stuck in one place when they could get a job and housing in another place, but are held up because of the complexities of the voucher system. We need to promote more naturally occurring affordable housing, which has buy-in of the communities, I think, oftentimes. We need to promote more senior housing, and we could change 830G in order to do that. Most importantly, We need the buy-in, we need flexibility for the towns and cities to ensure that this development, that it happens with the buy-in of our local communities. This bill does not do that. In fact, this bill undermines that cause, and it's one of the great redeeming qualities of this state, that we have a tradition of home rule, of local democracy. It keeps people engaged when they're concerned about the direction of the state, which they should be, because it is been economically on a bad course for a long time, because the state government has failed in its oversight, in its governance of this state's economy for too long. It is one of those great redeeming qualities of this state that keeps people here, and that keeps people in their communities, and keeps those communities great. We need to call upon those traditions in order to ensure that we have economic opportunity in this state. We can do both. This bill doesn't do it, and I am sure that we'll hear even better reasons to oppose this bill. But as of now, I will leave my time for others and urge everyone to vote no here today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Senator. Any other discussion?